Hi, I'm Greg Krasovsky. I'm an attorney who specializes in representing victims of economic crimes in cryptocurrency, also related to blockchain and decentralized finance. If you feel, or if you suspect, you have reason to suspect that you've become a victim of an economic crime involving cryptocurrency exchanges, cryptocurrency brokers, promoters, also promoters of other digital assets such as tokens, digital tokens, NFTs. If you're a victim of various businesses that are being pitched to you who specialize in using blockchain technology, who are also in the decentralized finance world, please contact my law offices so we can try to help you. And in conjunction with local counsel, if necessary, if we think you have a viable case, represent you in legal proceedings. If you're a victim of a crime, we will represent you before law enforcement, local and federal law enforcement, to make sure that we can explain everything that has happened to you in a clear, coherent form and assist law enforcement in their investigations. So those who victimized you will be brought to justice. Let's just go through some of the recent things that have happened and things that my law office has dealt with in this digital world of basically what we refer to as cybercrime. People can become victims of cybercrime simply by having their personal identity information stolen. Imagine if your bank account gets hacked, if your credit card, if your PayPal account, if your eBay or Amazon account. And there are unfortunately people out there who steal this information and who sell it in various underground marketplaces and like what's called the dark web. And they sell it and they use it. Hopefully you will be compensated for your losses by your financial institution, but that's not always the case. Plus, you can also imagine what happens if someone steals your identity and starts to acquire credit cards, lines of credit in your name, things like that. People can also become victims of cybercrimes once they start purchasing cryptocurrencies. Very popular. Even services like PayPal would offer their clients the opportunity to purchase cryptocurrencies from their wallets. I'm not going to go into whether it's a good investment. That's not my place. And obviously you should seek the advice of an independent, competent, experienced financial advisor who has the requisite licenses to give you that advice and experience. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Anytime you purchase cryptocurrencies, you're going to go through the same things that people went through when they bought penny stocks that were traded on NASDAQ or other exchanges. People can become victims of what they call pump and dump schemes, where the stock or tokens or cryptocurrencies were specifically promoted by people who were holding on to them and who wanted them to increase in value quickly. And then what would they do? Once it gets pumped up, boom, it gets dumped. Price drops and you're the loser. And obviously you don't want to be in that position. Now, the other way people have lost money in this is through, unfortunately, dishonest, basically criminal managers and owners of cryptocurrency exchanges, through which currencies were traded and converted into real fiat currencies. And often the owners, managers, promoters of these exchanges would get access to crypto wallets of their customers and basically withdraw funds from them, or would say that funds were converted and not necessarily at an honest price or an honest exchange rate. All sorts of schemes. But regardless, if you believe you've been victimized, you've been taken advantage of, have us look into it. It will let you know whether a crime has been committed against you or whether a tort has been committed against you, whether your contractual or legal rights have been violated, and if you have a viable case. You have same issues with blockchain technology companies. Blockchain technology is not a panacea. It's just an instrument, an effective instrument that can be used to simplify various transactions. But the way it has been promoted as the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, it smells like pump and dump schemes or a bubble that would burst sooner or later. So if you were an investor that was, I don't want to say duped, but convinced into investments in any of these companies, and basically through misrepresentations, right? So we call that fraud in the inducement, where someone is inducing you to part with your money, right, to get some material gain out of you in a transaction by providing you with misleading information. And the misrepresentation can be active and passive. In other words, people can actively misrepresent things by lying, by exaggerating data, or it can be passive by purposefully failing to disclose materially important information. And obviously, if you're looking for investors, you may not disclose some of the honest negative things that are happening with your company or with your project, because the investors wouldn't give you any money if they knew that. So this is how fraudulent investment can be committed. If you're a victim of this, reach out to us. There are other ways in which you can become a victim. We can't go through all of them, but I'm just going to go through the general categories once more. If you think something went wrong in your investments or in your dealings out there in the world of digital assets, digital investments, digital assets, I've said NFTs, right? You have pump and dump schemes with NFTs as well. And people will specifically do this and convince you, hey, buy this NFT, it's going up. I mean, look. And they're doing this because they're going to get money out of it. And you're going to be the loser, right? Everybody likes to share profits, and people like to pass on losses, especially criminals who specialize in economic crimes. You can also become a victim of tokens. What's a token? All right? The company issues you a token, and where a promoter will offer you a token, either to buy or as collateral, or some additional financial incentive to invest in a company. And that token can be as meaningless as a candy wrapper at the end of the day, if there's nothing tangible behind it. And the value can be very subjective, not to mention the liquidity issues of, can you sell it? Are you allowed to transfer it? It all depends on your token documentation. Same thing with people who invest in various, Web3 or cyber startups using safes, right? Simple agreement for future equity. At least before, people would give you real equity. You'd get a stake in an LLC or you'd get shares in a corporation for your investment. Here you're going to get that. What you're getting is you're getting a contract that will allow you to acquire equity at a future date based on a certain agreed upon valuation, right? Post-money valuation. This is absolutely subjective. It may not correspond to the financial, economic, and business realities of the company involved. So we want you to consider this as well. Excuse me, let me get rid of this phone call. Now, getting back to what I was saying. In order to figure out whether you have a valid claim in all these things, requires time. In order for us to evaluate all your documentation, so we're going to ask you to provide documentation, to provide all your correspondence with the people involved, and then thoroughly interview you to get all the details. And we're doing this to establish all the pertinent legal facts. Once we've established all the pertinent legal facts, then we're in a position to conduct some competent legal analysis and tell you whether we think your legal rights have been violated. And if that's the first step, unfortunately, just because your legal rights have been violated, either through violation of contract obligations, contractual obligations, or a violation of, let's say, civil laws, and we call those torts, or if they've been violated through violation of criminal statutes or other federal, for instance, administrative regulations, does not mean that you may have a viable case. Because we always have a twofold goal when we're representing victims of these crimes. Goal number one is to get you compensation, right? You've lost money. To compensate you also for your pain and suffering and other related losses. Goal number two is to bring those responsible to justice. We bring them to justice if they've, committed a civil tort against you or breach of contract by having civil penalties imposed upon them in a court of law or in arbitration, or by having them compensate you, right? That's their punishment. They have to compensate you, and also certain penalties can be applicable in particular cases. The other way we bring these people to justice if they've committed crimes against you is working with law enforcement to convince them to investigate this case with us and to prosecute it, to arrest these people and to bring them to trial. Most of these cases, anyway, don't go to trial. Often, as you know, in criminal law, cases get settled through a plea bargain with a prosecution for a lesser sentence or for a lesser offense. But what we will also advocate for in these proceedings, because ultimately it's the prosecutor's decision and also the judge's decision who has to approve a plea bargain, but we would also ask for and be your advocate is to make sure that you're also compensated, that within the sentence that's imposed, within the plea bargain or the guilty plea that's obtained, compensation will be specifically mentioned. And that individual, aside from either doing time or paying fines and penalties to the government, will also be obligated to compensate you as a victim. And if he doesn't, then he would be in violation of whatever agreement's been reached with him. And he may, instead of being on probation, have to do jail time or not be eligible for early release or parole or things like that. So that's the goal. Regarding cyber crimes, regarding being victims of, in the digital space, in today's global economy, this is something else I need you to consider. Just because either you, the victim, or the companies involved, or the perpetrators involved, or the witnesses, or other relevant related third parties are in different countries, that's fine. Doesn't mean, you can't pursue this. My law office specifically specializes in international work. What does this mean? It means that over these years, I've taken the time to understand the laws of various jurisdictions and established relationships with lawyers in various jurisdictions, and have experience working with government officials and law enforcement in various countries. So if we have to bring in lawyers abroad, start proceedings abroad, if we have to work with foreign law enforcement, including through Interpol, not a problem. I have lots of experience in this area. And just because some of these perpetrators, bad guys, think that they can take your money and hide it in another country, that's not going to work for them. What we will do, regardless of all the various political issues going on around the world today, we will do everything in our power to work with foreign law enforcement, to work with foreign government regulators. You have government regulators that deal with anti-money laundering regulations, that deal with foreign currency regulations, foreign currency controls, with customs. Also, you have government regulators that have been specifically empowered to deal with the cyberspace, whether it's internet scams or cryptocurrency scams and exchanges. They needed to be registered and licensed and this and that. So we'll work with every government agency that's involved. But what you do have to keep in mind is this, and I'm honest, I tell this to all my new clients and current clients. If you're a victim of an economic crime, generally, you shouldn't spend more. Well, from the get-go, your budget to try to get your money back, limited to 10% of what you've lost. Statistics show that you'll get that back at least. In other words, you're not going to lose any money, and your goal is to try to get the original amount that you've lost, right? But if you have to spend extra money on trying to get the money back on legal fees, or for instance, often we will retain, if necessary, the service of foreign consultants or private detective security agencies to get additional information on the bad guys, where their assets are, where their whereabouts are, things like that. Spending initially up to 10% is fine. If it looks like you have a viable case, even spending up to 20% of what you lost may be justified. Because in the worst case scenario, if you don't get anything back, yes, you've lost 20% more. But our statistics show that people will get back, thanks to the additional money they've invested in this recovery effort, at least the money they've invested in the recovery effort, plus some of the original amount invested. But that takes, immediate reaction. In other words, don't wait on this thing thinking, should I pursue it or should I not? While you're waiting, your bad guys are spending your money and there's less money to recover. While you're waiting, the bad guys are covering their tracks, destroying evidence, moving assets, selling them to third parties. And then, you're going to start dealing with good faith buyers who will say, hey, this may have been your asset, but I've bought it. I had no idea it was stolen. I'm a good faith buyer. You can't just take it away from me. So the quicker we work for you on this, the better off you are. Plus, you're also competing, and I hate to say this, you are in competition with other people, with other victims who've been defrauded. And if there's a limited amount of money to go around, often the people who start protecting their rights first, actively and aggressively, are the ones who get the money back. So that's another reason to act very quickly. If you have specific questions, reach out to us. If you have specific situations involving any of the things that I've mentioned, in the world of cybercrime, cybersecurity, and through cybercrime and cybersecurity, maybe we should even do a separate video on how can people become victims of ransomware, victims of extortionware, and of other schemes that criminal hackers use to make you part with money by either seizing your infrastructure or making sure everything is encoded, and they're the ones that have the key. Otherwise, you can't recover any data because it's all encrypted. There is a way to conduct negotiations with these people. There is a way to effectively work with law enforcement to make sure that minimal damage is caused. And if you just look at the internet, you will see that when it comes to cases of ransomware and even extortionware, often companies do pay these criminals for one simple reason. Not to pay causes bigger losses. So, often you want to act out of principle saying, hey, I'm not going to fall prey to this extortion attempt. But if they've encrypted things that you need for your business, or they've, even worse, encrypted third-party information that you've had in your possession, sometimes having a competent negotiator represent you is the most cost-effective way to minimize your losses. And then work with us where we will recommend to you IT professionals that we know that will strengthen your cybersecurity to make sure this doesn't happen to you again. And also we'll work with law enforcement to pass on any and all relevant information that will help put these people out of business, right? By identifying them, tracking them down, arresting and prosecuting them, and if necessary, extraditing them. So that's the approach. Thank you for your time. We look forward to helping you.